to indicate whether that's causing the decline here. However, it does confirm the importance of grassland habitat to still preserve, especially in open space land use. And this could potentially not only protect kestrels, but other species as well. The findings of my study indicate a few recommendations for land managers. Since they chose based on grassland and pasture, conserving areas with these habitat types would be beneficial. Adding more nest boxes to grassland land cover and agricultural, maintaining a distance from the roads could possibly attract more kestrels to nest box sites for future studies. Because they tend to be nest site limited, the introduction of nest boxes typically result in a rapid increase in the number of pairs that breed. The future studies of American kestrel habitat should investigate the role of human population growth on kestrel distribution and abundance. In addition, adding more sites and nest boxes with monitoring reproductive success, as well as that association with land cover, soil, and prey type, that would be beneficial to understand their habitat selection in this county. Due to the small number of kestrels found in this study, future research should include multiple field seasons and increase sample size to gather more information. So I'd like to thank several people who made this project possible with their support. Dr. Lynn Trulio, who helped me develop the research topic and questions and helped guide me through this whole process. Dr. Rachel O'Malley helped me initiate the research with the environmental topics class and helping me with statistics. And Rick Haas, who helped me with ArcMap and allowed me to use resources in the Urban and Regional Planning Department. And Max, who helped me develop questions and analysis and was a really good mentor during my internship. And then a thank you to Lee Pauser, who's not here today, but for his work on the nest boxes and like his knowledge of kestrels and allowing me to use that information. And then just to thank family and friends who support my goals and fellow grad students who've been there for me during this process.
As is customary in thesis defense, the first round of questions will go to the committee. So, anyone from the committee with any questions? Our speaker.
Good job, Nicole. Lots of hours working this is one thing, and that is clarification. Don't like these knowledge. Good. I'm interested by many of your findings, and I have some sort of curiosity about the limitations for the kestrel. So they need grassland and they need nest sites, which are not the same thing. So those are the limiting factors. If you go to the slide that describes the developed versus agricultural versus open space. I'm thinking of, okay, you found no difference in the amount of grassland between them, right? Why? It seems like there should be, right? So what are these sites looking like? What is going on there?
I think possibly like for maybe the urban sites, they were also kind of close to like fields nearby that could possibly be in the buffer still. And then agricultural and open space. Open space was usually like at a regional park or like parkland or recreation, which did have more grassland than the other land use types.
What were the numbers of each of those types? you did show that.
For this slide,
Yeah, just sort of how many agricultural sites did you have and how many
Oh.
urban sites? There you go. So I'm wondering if you might be having just a power problem.
yeah.
So is your intuition that the open space may have had more grassland, but you just couldn't detect it specifically because you only had 4 undeveloped sites?
Yeah, that would make sense.
But it still becomes super interesting, assuming that maybe there was more grassland around the open space, but you couldn't detect it, but you still found, okay, you found, it's an interesting matrix, but you found more Kestrels in open space. More of the Kestrel sites were in the open space. But in the developed areas, you found more raptors, or other raptors. So I'm thinking about really that relationship here. And on this slide, you said that there were interactions between the hawks, the red-tailed hawks, and the kestrels. And you said they occurred in all of the sites. Is that listed here, or is that a separate thing?
The interaction
Yeah.
between them was, it was during 3 surveys, 2 developed land use and then 1 open space land use that I saw them like defending.
And I guess so I'm wondering, is it possible that there's more competition of that sort in the developed areas? Is that one of the reasons that they're not around the developed areas in terms of where they are?
That could be possible. Red-tailed hawks are also known to prey on kestrels too.
I was wondering about that. You mentioned perch sites, and you mentioned, and I thought, kites, are they eating these guys? So are they predators and competitors?
Could, yeah,
Yeah.
possibly be the reason why maybe I didn't see as many kestrels or just competing for prey or,
Yeah. So I'm really trying to figure out in my head what's going on at those developed sites, and whether those are the sinks that you talked about, the bad places to perch, but they go there because there's some maybe perches. Are there more perches in developed sites, or?
from what I saw, there were. I didn't record like the total number of perches at each site,
Okay.
so I wouldn't be able to really compare them, but from what I saw, there's more power lines.
Yeah.
That's the big one, I guess the biggest difference between like, the parks and open space, and even the agricultural areas. So, yeah, I think that would be the difference.
And one more thing, between your occupied and unoccupied, I'm super interested in those results too. How did you constrain the randomized sites that were unoccupied? Did you try to pair them or match them at all, or how did you choose what was the universe that you chose them from?
So I use the general plan land use that goes like around the city. And so I just put maybe like 5 random points in each type and then chose based on whether I could get to them or not. If I could hike to them or if it was public and not private. So, and that's how I chose the eBird sites too, because there's a lot of different ones and some of them are clustered together. So I chose each one based on the same parameters within those land use types, but then also if they're public and accessible, basically.
Okay, the other committee members can ask some things around,
Okay.
trying to get the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
Nicole?
Nicole, while we're on this slide, sorry to dive right in, just I had a question on this slide. You had 10, 6, and 2, no wait, you had 13, 5, and 4 locations, right? Based on open space, ag, and developed. Do you think that means, do these data indicate that there are more kestrels in open space or not? I mean, what do you think?
Since there's more open space sites, I don't think I could say that there's more kestrels. It'd probably just have to be equal to say whether there are more kestrels, because there's going to be more based on there's 13 versus like 5 and 4. But sorry, I'm just thinking.
But I'm wondering if you were to characterize how much open space agriculture and developed, what percentage of the area that you were looking at is in open space agriculture and developed? Would it parallel this, or is one land use overrepresented in your sites? Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, but I mean, I guess maybe I'm getting more at the fact that these were not randomly, they're not randomly chosen.
Right, but
They're
it's all the sites that have
from-
kestrels, right?
Yeah, they're from eBird sites.
So you think people might just be looking in some areas?
People might be frequenting open space more, or, so, I mean, I think there are some factors that might result in some bias as, in the numbers, but I don't know, I want to know what you thought about that.
Yeah, there could be the bias just because there's, like, it's more public too, easier to look at raptors, but
It's kind of interesting to look at eBird checklists and how dense they are in each of these areas, and then see whether raptors are proportionate to what you'd expect based on that density. I would expect that they'd be overrepresented and developed, because that's where people hang out. It's like,
More
oh my
people-
gosh,
more
there's a
people look-
kestrel,
Yeah,
right?
I think that would be interesting, maybe
Yeah.
not for this, but,
No.
not putting anything extra
So
in there.
these are things that you can add in and things that we can sort of
I think
find.
that's interesting.
Not so for more analysis, but for more discussion. But I find it provocative, sort of, what, you found that roads weren't important, right? And yet the other literature has found that they are important. And so when you say, ooh, what's going on? Why is that? Is it because we have so many roads? What is it? Or again, maybe you don't have the background variability to find really roadless areas.
yeah, and all those locations, like comparing their research are like on the East Coast, and they're kind of different areas. They're not super highly urbanized with this. Could be more traffic here, something that might impact like if they're near them or not.
And maybe other committee members?
Yeah, I was wondering, so one of the recommendations is that kestrels prefer grassland, so if we preserve grasslands, then you'll, benefit kestrels. And you've done, with these buffers, a lot of work to look at the proportions and the relative abundance of grasslands within each of those buffer areas. And I was wondering, from your intuition of looking at those, like, can you say things about like patch size for grasslands? Because it's one thing to say, more is better, but especially in this urban matrix, like, do you think you could pull out, or do you have an idea of patch size and, what is enough? Was it different between an area where it's really mixed and it's a lot of fragmentation versus, a buffer area that had really solid grasslands all the way through?
I could possibly look at that. Yeah, it is kind of hard because a lot of them were there's 5 different land covers and one of them. Maybe it could be possible to look at the percentage of each one.
Yeah, or like largest patch or something like that. I'm just curious, because from a land manager's perspective, I think a lot of times they are working with smaller areas, and then you also have trade-offs with other species that prefer a lot of cover or something like that. So in terms of, yeah, applying the information, because you already have these buffers with the land types categorized, it might be interesting to just think about, even if you just looked at them visually, you might be able to tell if like large patches are where you're finding the kestrels versus more fragmented areas.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we'll look at that too.
So Nicole, it's been a real pleasure to work with you over these past 2 years, I would say.
Yeah.
I really admire your thoroughness and your, I like the comment, the Zen-like approach to your work. So, first of all, a really easy question. You mentioned, every time I come to these seminars, I always learn a new word, but what are snags? You said tree branches are snags. What's a snag? I'm just curious.
It's like from a dead tree that's not,
Okay.
anymore, so,
Just
yeah.
dead tree branch.
Standing dead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Walking dead.
Just curious.
Oh,
yes. Thank you, that's my new word of the day. I wonder, Nicole, could you go back to the slide that shows the buffer and the land use patterns, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. Missed that. Okay. First of all, can you refresh my memory about the resolution of those raster cells? Is it 30 by 30 meters?
30, yeah.
30 by 30, okay. And what is the currency of the data? Do you know what the year of the data is?
This is 2011.
Okay. Just curious, given that the data is almost a decade old now, did you do any ground truthing of the data? Like, did you compare what the raster data showed with what you saw in the field? Is that part of the process?
Yeah, I looked at it each one, like where the kestrels were, and I recorded like on my notes, like the percentage that I could see around the point, with like different vegetation, if there's trees, and then if there's development. So yeah, each side I tried to record like as many details to look at, make sure that this is pretty accurate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Another question I had was how you determined what I think I saw as the 350-meter buffer distance. Was that informed by literature or just a reasonableness approach?
So the territory size varies. It could be between 0.5 kilometers and 1.4. So I try to just choose points that were at least like 700 meters, and then did the buffer based on that. So 350 as a buffer around it.
Okay. Thank you.
I had one to piggyback off
Yeah,
of
please.
that idea. So it's based on the, territory size, and I'm wondering how likely is it to encounter non-territorial adults for kestrels in general, like during the breeding season?
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure. Like I chose to do the study between like May and August, so a time where it's pretty high activity, where you're more likely to encounter breeding pairs.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they wouldn't have been breeding as well, but I chose like a window of time to try to get like more accurately if they're breeding or not.
Yeah, when you saw that, you said you saw 4 at one point, I think. Were those younger individuals or were they all adults?
2 of them were adults and then 2 were juvenile.
Nicole, it occurs to me that the species favors grasslands, but those, of course, are the same types of lands that developers salivate over, right? Because they're easy to develop. They're usually flatter, no trees to clear. So one thought I had was, as you finish this work, you may want to add something to the effect where conservation managers may want to advocate for urban growth boundaries. You mentioned Boulder, Colorado as part of your research. Boulder, Colorado is really noted for its fir urban growth boundary. The city can grow here and not beyond. Portland, Oregon has a growth boundary. Actually, San Jose has a growth boundary.
Yeah.
So just a thought that since these lands are so valuable to this species, but also so valuable to developers, you may want to include a recommendation where managers might want to advocate for more urban growth boundaries as in the city planning documents.
Okay.
Otherwise, fantastic. The GIS, everything you said about the GIS work, I think is replicable to other locations. So I think you're off to a good start. Great job.
Thank you.
And one more thought that I had about the roads. I was looking at my notes and the distance to the road between the unoccupied and occupied, there was a difference there, right? So,
Yeah, just the.
do you have a slide for that?
Yeah.
These things we have control over, so roads is certainly one. Okay.
Yeah, this one.
No, that's not there. You may
Oh,
have
I
just said
said
it.
yeah.
Is it true? Was there a greater difference, the distance to the road in the occupied?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Statistically, it didn't differ, but just the average meters that I calculated.
So there's high variability, and it didn't come out as a significant difference.
Yeah, it wasn't too great. So the occupied was 179 meters, and then unoccupied was 161 meters.
Okay.
So it wasn't.
So it might be that there are reasons, for example, you excluded sites you couldn't reach from the randomized selection that would have made it even higher. So anyways, so roads weren't important, so that's clearer to me now. You said the next, so let's say that roads aren't important, that they're dealing with roads. The nest box distances to roads was, you said, greater than the occupied sites. So one possible observation could be that putting up nest boxes, you don't need to exclude sites that are closer to roads based on your data. Potentially, it might be worth checking that out. That they may be going too far for some of the nest boxes, and putting up more nest boxes, they can not worry as much about roads. Just trying to think of things, concrete things people can do or try that are coming out of your data. Now that might be risky, because maybe you don't have enough confidence in your data to risk imperiling Kestrels, and we can maybe test that a little more. But if it were the situation that you would consider sites that had more roads because they don't seem to be a big problem, that might be an outcome you would contemplate.
Ask Lee Poser if he has any recommendations.
He was asking like me usually if there was anything different, but
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Steve Hauser, did you have any additional data?
he didn't have any recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know him? Okay.
Other questions from the wider audience?
I think the only point I wanted to make with the idea of nest box placement would be to put in the caveat that your data suggests things about occupancy, but not about like nest
Success.
success,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
you had mentioned as like people had suggested that roads might stress them out or
Yeah.
influence success, but.
Well, I mean, actually going back to the behavior slide, there's a lot more in there. I was noticing that the numbers per site are much higher in the open space than in the developed, and that suggests that there might be more fledglings that she's finding. And so there might be more success. There's a lot of speculation you can throw in at the end, but. Did you look at the red tails and white, red tails and kites versus occupied and unoccupied?
No, I didn't separate them out from the total birds of prey that I saw.
Okay.
It's all hands interesting.
This may not be pertaining to your research, but in general, I just want to know, are kestrels very highly territorial? Like, just behavior-wise during breeding season?
From what I saw, yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, do they tolerate other kestrels during, I mean, I don't know if it's season related, but do they even tolerate other kestrels nearby? Like, I know about peregrines, they definitely won't, especially during breeding season, absolutely not. But I was just curious how kestrels are being a falcon as well, so I was just.
I'm not too sure. I haven't read too much about like that specific behavior.
Sure, but in your observation, did you see kestrels interacting with each other? This is very, I mean, it's nothing to do with your research, but I'm just curious, that's all.
I didn't see as much interaction between them.
Okay.
Like, I saw multiple ones that I
Sure.
studied. It was usually between like the other raptors, or I even saw like a mockingbird harassing a kestrel.
Yeah, wow.
And also a swallow and
No.
birds. It's just kind of weird. But yeah, I didn't see
Sure,
too much.
no worries.
So I was just wondering, when you talked about sometimes you would see, I think you mentioned that you see mostly adult kestrels when you're doing these, right? But you did see a couple sites that had fledglings. Did you think those were evidence of like successful breeding in that site, or is that kind of early in the season and maybe they were, or maybe they were late in the season, they were already dispersing from other sites? I don't know if that would have been useful to look at if you had enough sites that had fledglings or juveniles that you could have looked at that a little bit.
Yeah, it was later in the breeding season. I think it was like around August that I saw them there. So that could be indicating that they were successful. But I wasn't able to see the nest site or where that could have happened or where they're fledging from. So, but yeah.
More observation.
Yeah.
Does the committee now have enough questions to go deliberate?
Yes, we can go deliberate and.
And we'll take some more questions. I'm sure you have more questions about the behavior of this bird that you have in your backyard.
I just had a question about your organization, like, because you had so many different sites that you had to visit, were you documenting on like notebooks, or were you taking your laptop out to the sites? How were you documenting?
I just took a clipboard and used all the data sheets and just had everything with me. Yeah, I just kept everything in my bag and connected to different spots.
Did you like create a sheet for yourself of like what you needed to collect, and then just had that for each different site?
Yeah, I used like a template from a different like data sheet for raptors and habitat activities. So I added some of the other stuff that I wanted to record as well, and I just took that with me. Yeah.
Did you consider looking at trying to compare